Today we dive into the top 2 Washington quarter dollar coins that every collector talks about. These coins carry history, rarity, and serious value. If you think quarters are just spare change, you need to see this. Watch till the end to know why these two stand above the rest, and how much they can actually be worth.
The Washington quarter has been around since the early 1930s, but the 1983 version has a bit of an unexpected twist in its history. It wasn't a low mintage year in terms of sheer numbers, far from it. In Philadelphia alone, more than 673 million were struck, and in Denver, about 618 million. On top of that, there were a few million proofs struck in San Francisco for collectors. So, you'd think with numbers like that, the year wouldn't matter much. But here's the catch: in 1983, the mint didn't release the standard uncirculated mint sets that collectors often rely on to get pristine examples. That meant the vast majority of 1983 quarters went straight into circulation, clinking around in cash registers and pockets from day one. Why does that matter? Because over the decades, coins in circulation get banged up. They pick up scratches, lose their luster, and get worn down. For collectors, condition is everything. So while there might be hundreds of millions of 1983 quarters out there, finding one in truly high grade, sharp details, bright luster, no distracting marks, is surprisingly tough. And when supply gets tight for top quality examples, prices go up. So what kind of value are we talking about? If your 1983 quarter has been well used, it's likely still worth about face value. That's the reality for most of them. But if it's uncirculated and has been preserved in great shape, you could be looking at something much more interesting. Coins graded in the lower uncirculated range, like MS-63, might sell for a handful of dollars. Move up to MS-65, and you could be in the $40 to $60 range. MS-66 or MS-67 examples? Those can easily go into the hundreds, sometimes higher if they're especially nice and attract competitive bidders. And that's without even talking about errors, because this is where the potential jumps from nice little bonus to wow, that's a payday. Minting errors can happen in all sorts of ways, and they fascinate collectors. One of the more famous varieties from 1983 is known as the spitting eagle. On the reverse side, there's a small die gouge between the eagle's beak and neck that makes it look like the bird is spitting. It's subtle, but collectors love quirky things like that, and high-grade examples of the spitting eagle can fetch far more than standard coins. Then there are the big, bold errors, like off-center strikes. If the design is shifted noticeably so part of the coin is blank, collectors take notice, especially if the date is still visible. The more dramatic the shift, the higher the value tends to be. Even a modest off-center strike can be worth many times face value, and the more extreme examples can bring in well over $100. But the real showstoppers are the major oddities, like coins struck on the wrong metal planchet or overstruck on other coins or tokens. There's a legendary example of a 1983 quarter that was struck on an amusement token. You can actually see the token's original design peeking through, including the words "This is my lucky day" and little clovers. That coin ended up selling for an amount that could buy you a solid used car, because for error collectors, it's one of a kind. And sometimes, it's not even about wild visual errors, it's about the hunt for the finest known examples. There's a part of the hobby where collectors compete in something called registry sets. These are collections of coins graded by third-party services, and the goal is to have the best possible examples in the world. Registry collectors will sometimes pay top dollar for a coin that's technically common, simply because it's graded a hair higher than anything else available. For a coin like the 1983 quarter, where gem examples are already rare, that competition can drive prices into surprising territory. Now, let's get practical. If you have a 1983 quarter and you're wondering if it's worth anything, the first thing to do is check the mint mark. It's a small letter on the obverse side near Washington's ponytail. A P means Philadelphia, a D means Denver, and proofs will have an S. In certain grades, one mint might be more sought after than the other, but both have their desirability in high grades. Next, look closely at the condition. Hold the coin under good light and tilt it back and forth. Does it still have that original mint luster, that bright, cartwheel-like shine? Or is it dull from wear? Check the high points, Washington's hair above his ear, the tops of the eagle's wing. These are the first places to lose detail when a coin circulates. If you think yours looks sharp, compare it to pictures of graded coins online to get a rough idea of its condition. But if you really suspect you've got something exceptional, you might want to send it to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC. They'll assign it an official grade and seal it in a protective holder, which adds credibility and often boosts the selling price. Once you know what you have, you've got a decision to make: keep it for your collection or sell it. If you decide to sell, you've got a few options. eBay is one of the biggest platforms for coin sales, and it gives you access to a global audience. Just remember to search for sold listings, not just active ones, to get a realistic idea of what your coin might bring. Anyone can list a coin for thousands of dollars, but that doesn't mean it will sell. Sold listings tell the real story. For truly exceptional coins, like high-grade examples or rare errors, you might want to consider a coin auction house. They specialize in marketing coins to serious collectors, and they can sometimes get you a better price than selling directly online. On the other hand, if your coin is nice but not a world beater, you might do better selling it yourself and avoiding the auction fees. When you list your coin, presentation matters. Use clear, well-lit photos that show both sides, plus close-ups of any interesting details or errors.
Next up, the 1972 Washington $quarter may look ordinary, but when you explore its history and the way collectors value it, you begin to realize why this coin is more than just 25 cents. If you stay with me until the end of this video, we'll learn the different ways this coin is valued on online platforms and auctions, and you will see why some of these quarters have sold for surprising amounts. The Washington quarter had already been in circulation for 40 years. By 1972, first introduced in 1932 to honor the 200th birthday of George Washington, the design by John Flanagan became a staple of American coinage. The obverse features the profile of Washington, with the word liberty above and the national motto "In God We Trust" to the side. The reverse shows the eagle perched on a bundle of arrows with olive branches below, a strong and classic symbol of the United States. By 1972, the design had become so familiar that most people hardly gave it a second thought. Yet 1972 was an important year for the quarter. The United States had moved away from silver coinage only a few years earlier. From 1965 onward, quarters were struck not in 90% silver, but in a copper-nickel-clad composition. That meant that the 1972 quarter was part of the new era of modern base metal coinage. Millions were produced for circulation, and at first glance it might seem like there is nothing special about them. But collectors know to look deeper. The mintage numbers for 1972 were enormous. The Philadelphia Mint produced over 215 million quarters without a mint mark. The Denver Mint added more than 311 million with the D mint mark. The San Francisco Mint produced proofs for collectors only, and those carried the S mint mark. In total, hundreds of millions of 1972 quarters entered circulation, in them common in worn condition today. But the story changes dramatically when you consider condition, rarity and errors. Most people who come across a 1972 quarter see a coin that has been used heavily for decades. It might have scratches, dull color, or worn down details. These circulated coins usually do not bring much premium. But when you find a 1972 quarter in mint state condition, with full luster and sharp detail, the value begins to rise. Coins graded mint state 65 and higher are much harder to locate because so few survived without marks from bags and circulation. Collectors pay close attention to strike quality and surfaces, and that is where the difference in value becomes clear. The Denver Mint issues are abundant, but sometimes show weaker strikes, which affects desirability. Philadelphia coins without a mint mark, new one as well. But again, high-grade examples are much scarcer than the raw mintage figures suggest. The San Francisco proof coins are a different story. Struck with polished dies and special care, these proofs show mirror-like fields and frosted design elements. They were never intended for circulation, and today they remain popular with collectors who want a complete set. Asterisk eras from 1972 were where things become exciting. Quarters from this year are known with double die obverses, where parts of the lettering or design are struck twice and appear double to the naked eye. Some of these double dies are bold enough that they can be spotted without magnification, and collectors compete strongly for them. Off-center strikes are another dramatic error, where part of the design is missing because the blank planchet was misaligned. Depending on how far off-center the coin is, the value can climb sharply. There are also clipped planchet errors where a portion of the blank metal is missing before striking, leaving a curved bite-like shape in the finished coin. Each of these errors is rare and adds significant value to the otherwise common 1970 quarter. Asterisk another important factor for collectors is color and luster. Quarters that still show their original mint brilliance are far more desirable than dull grey pieces. Even among mint state coins, there is a huge difference between a coin with average luster and one with blazing eye appeal. Collectors are willing to pay premiums for coins that simply look better, even if the technical grade is the same. Asterisk the historical context of the 1970 quarter also matters. The early 70s were a time of transition in American coinage. Silver had vanished from circulating dimes and quarters only a few years earlier, and inflation was beginning to erode the buying power of the coin. What once bought a decent amount of goods was now becoming less and less valuable in real terms. Yet the quarter remained one of the most used coins in daily commerce. The 1972 issue carried that roll through grocery stores, gas stations, and vending machines across the nation. Holding one today is like holding a piece of everyday life from the early 70s. We come to the part that every collector wants to know. How much is a 1970 Washington quarter worth today? The answer depends on condition and variety. Circulated examples from Philadelphia or Denver are usually worth only their face value or slightly above. Mint state coins, however, can bring premiums, with higher grade examples selling for several dollars each and top graded coins bringing more. Proof coins from San Francisco typically sell for a few dollars, but pristine deep cameo proofs can fetch much higher prices. Errors are where the biggest jumps occur. A bold double die or a dramatic off-center strike can sell for hundreds of dollars and in some cases even more depending on demand. The values I am mentioning come from a combination of different online platforms, price guides, and auction records where collectors actively buy and sell these coins today. Asterisk so if you have a 1972 Washington quarter, do not dismiss it. It may be an ordinary circulated piece, or it may be something far more valuable. If you want to know the exact price of your coin, whether it is a Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco issue, whether it is a proof or an error, leave a comment with the details. Every coin has its own story, and by comparing yours to recent sales, you can discover what it is truly worth. The 1970 Washington quarter dollar may seem common, but in the right condition or with the right variety, it can be a real treasure hiding in plain sight.